Batu, Barada, Nikto.
You must remember those words.
Gordon's alive.
You know what the Turing test is?
I know Kung Fu.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
My God, it's full of stars.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stories Out of Time and Space. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and as always, I'm joined by Julian Darius. Julian, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm doing okay, but I'm here for revenge.
Yeah, take your revenge. Is that for having to watch this film, or are you kind of happy that we watched it?
No, I'm happy for this film. I'm just angry at society and human beings and animals and the world generally. I'm just a bitter, bitter old man, possibly a
Fair.
creature.
Yes. Well, we're all animals, really. We are part of the world. Yes, we are back to do the sequel to Creatures from the Black Lagoon. We are talking about 1955's Revenge of the Creature, following a year on from the first film, with a surprisingly tight continuity, at least for sort of like the first bit, in which our titular character, the creature, or the Gillman, still residing in the Brazil lagoon, is captured and taken back to a Florida research center. And whilst there, he is kept in a tank, tried to be trained, and again, the man's a romantic. Just get himself stuck in another love triangle before escaping and running rampant, and reaching a rather sticky end yet again. So, Julian, what are your initial thoughts then on Revenge of the Creature?
I mean, I think this movie is as good or even possibly better than the first. That's not to say it's a masterpiece, but
Mhm.
I think the first one sort of compares unfavorably, except for the underwater shots, to a lot of other monster movies. It sort of feels clunky, and characters are a bit ill-defined. It kind of has that love triangle that it drops. This one is a much clearer narrative, even though the movie's split in sort of two halves.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the taking him to this aquarium, all the aquarium stuff is really interesting.
Mm.
Um, so I think this is a sort of clearer movie than the first one, and sort of keeps more of the love triangle, ridiculous though it may be, throughout. There's a clearer through line here.
Yeah, it's like they've tried to tidy up some of the looser elements of the first film. Um, and I think, again, even some of the characters feel a little bit more, as you say, sort of more well defined and clearer. And they're going to sort of, there's certain characters that have to exist, and they sort of go, okay, well, they've got to do certain things, which we'll get to. And then they go, well, they've done that, move on. Like, there's no sort of, everything's quite efficient in parts of this film, which I appreciate, for how they've approached it. Um, but also, I appreciate the continuity. I kind of like the fact that this film starts with them, a new team of people, not the same people. It's a new set of stars, except for our captain of the boat, Captain Lucas, taking them down the Amazon to the Black Lagoon. So he has that continuity on his ship from the first film. But again, like this thing of going back and it it has the problem of kind of making the first film look a bit silly when they're like, we wrapped up in the lagoon in less than 10 minutes, and off they go. But I love the fact that it has that continuity. Um, killing the creature clearly stunned it or injured it in the last one, and it's sort of back on its webbed feet and doing its thing again.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of complain mildly that we're supposed to think the creature's dead at the end of the first one, and of course this one ends with almost the exact same shot of the creature sort of shot and just kind of giving up the ghost and floating in the water.
Yeah.
Although there is arguably a little bit of ambiguity to both versions. But you know, you would assume that they think the creature's dead at the end of the first one, correctly, according to that film. Obviously, those wounds weren't as fatal as they first
Yeah.
appeared. Um, but nobody mentions the original characters. You know, they just nobody
No.
mentions that, like, well, you know, they reported him dead, but we're going to go ahead and investigate. Um, no, it's just kind of like so, you know, so I like that they have the same captain and he is a little salty and amusing here. It kind of helps to connect the two films. But
Mm.
there is, to be fair, a little bit of elision there, at least about the ending.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think there was no real thought of making sequels in the 50s. It was kind of like we're done and we're moving on. What's the next picture? Roll kind of thing. I think, the success of the first film. I mean, the fact that this came out a year later kind of tells
Mhm.
you that we're like, oh, that made a bunch of money. Let's get another one out. And I'm happy that they did. Um, because I quite like this film as well. But one of the things I sort of find with this film, um, is it feels like a natural sort of progression. Well, it felt like a natural progression of the first film. Like this feels like a sequel in that sense of we're going to go back, we're going to do sort of similar things but in a different location. And then I realized, oh, this film is actually an extension of the first film, and together those two films create King Kong. In that they go to the place, they find the creature, and then they're supposed to bring him back. And it's when he comes back that he runs rampant, and it's Beauty that killed the beast kind of thing. It felt weird when I was sort of watching it and realizing I'm like, oh, they've sort of taken the two halves of Kong and made two separate films and kind of like fell for it. But I thought that was interesting.
I thought about King Kong too. I guess the one thing I would say is that they still, because they ended the first film where they did, they have to have this whole sort of introductory sequence here where
Yeah,
they go out and capture the Gill Man. Um, and that whole bit really shouldn't be there if it were one movie. Like,
yeah,
what I would say is like this movie by itself is King Kong.
yeah,
Um,
but
just
much
with that opening
shorter.
stuff truncated because yeah, we've kind of done that already.
Yeah,
We made the first half of King Kong into its own movie, so we'll just kind of dispense with that and get on with the back to New York stuff.
yeah.
Um, I thought also about I think about Jurassic Park 2.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think about The Predator 2, even this idea of it's a kind of classic idea, right? We're gonna encounter the monster in its environment. Oh shit, are we gonna survive? And then what are we gonna do for a sequel? Well, let's take him back to Earth. Let's take him back to
The big
LA. Let's
city. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. It always is, isn't it? It's sort of like they often have the sort of the same, exactly that in the trailer. Like trailer voice guys, like um, they were the hunter in their territory. Now they're the hunted kind of thing. So yeah, it's almost like what Evil Dead 2 is as well, isn't it? It's kind of like we want to extend the film, but you probably didn't see the first one, so I'm going to tell you the story in the first like 7 minutes, and
Mhm.
then we're going to carry on from there. Um, So, but no, I appreciate that. It is kind of funny that we had an entire film about how strong and sort of crafty the Gill Man was and how he blocked the entrance to the lagoon and there was all these other bits and pieces. And in this one, they're just like dynamite, just tons of dynamite will stun him and then we'll take him back. And it apparently puts him in a coma long enough to be transported from Brazil to Florida. Um, Dry. I don't know how they kept him warm or how they kept him breathing, but
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole sort of journey down to the Amazon, as you point out, is, pretty short and easy compared to the first one.
mm,
We all know why, right? It's to get on with the movie, and we've seen
yeah,
it before. Um, I'm with you about the dynamite. Like, the Gillman sort of attacks, and it's well done and
mm,
entertaining. They know to include a Gillman attack, so they establish again his threat, right? But then they sort of put these boxes of dynamite in the water,
yeah,
and I'm thinking you might want to wait until he attacks again to set these off, right? Instead they just set them off, kills a bunch of fish, and the gill man just kind of floats up to the surface. And until then, you think, oh, right, you should have just waited until he attacks again. And then it's like, oh no, that was successful. He
Yep.
he was
Yeah.
there after all, and it's so anticlimactic. And sort of needlessly so, especially after you've just witnessed a dramatic attack.
Mm.
So I thought that was, anticlimactic and weird. And then this transport stuff, um, it's very strange that he's not really in water. He's on a stretcher. And I think, why don't you have a gun on him? Like they clearly are like, oh, he's in a coma, for
Yeah.
the purposes of the plot, they know he's in a coma and not going to wake up. They're not really taking any security protocols. And the suit, that never look. The suit is great. We've talked about how awesome it
Mm.
is.
Hmm.
It's never looked more like a suit when you put the guy on a stretcher out of the water.
I agree. Yeah, once that thing's out of the water for too long, and it starts to look like, say, like a guy in the suit, which is unfortunate. But again, um, the suit does look amazing. It looks best when it's underwater, doing bits and pieces. And so I'll give them props for that. But yeah, this thing of having them sort of walking it around because they make this great point of like they then put it into a tank and it's a shortish tank, and they've obviously, they're not messing around. They're going to start promoting it. The press are there and people are there to watch it. And now one of our heroes, Joe Hayes, is in the water with the creature, sort of pushing it around in order to get water to go over its gills, because that's what apparently they do with comatose sharks or anesthetized sharks to bring them round. You go, okay, cool. I like the idea. You're using something that we know and applying it. That's the kind of thing you would do. But you also know that this thing is vicious and strong and brutal, and you kind of like, again, you're saying there's no restrictions here. The pool's really small. It's he's been dry this whole time, and now you're sticking him in water. It is funny that like the logistics of this are really kind of waved over quite sort of quickly. Like there's some really interesting ideas, and they go, yeah, but don't think about the rest of it though. Just the bit in the water.
Yeah,
Um,
they could have better security,
yeah,
knowing that the goal is to revive him. I'm sort of not as bothered by that because I figure they don't really know if it'll work. Um, but still, I'm more bothered by it during the transport where it's like,
yeah,
is he going to wake up at any moment? Um, but I'm with you. I like this idea of running the water over his gills, of giving it a little bit of realism. You might want to put him in the big tank
yeah,
while he's
yeah,
still comatose, before he's a problem and killing people. Um, but yeah, I mean, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's a little spurious, this plot,
yeah.
this plan to let's revive him. Let's make sure the person reviving him is standing next to him, and the walls are 5 feet high, so we can easily get out.
Yeah. I mean, there's a thing. It sort of shows. I like that it's there to sort of the scene is there to be made, if you will. So the press are there to watch. There are people sort of bystanders watching and that sort of thing, spectators. So when he does come round, I mean, you've already said like one of the press guys sort of says, "Ugh, we've been here for hours," kind of like bored of just seeing this thing being pushed around the pool. But when he does come round and they start taking shots and or footage of it, the creature does go wild and tries to escape, and there's also other stuff. And there is a part of me that wonders, like, was this intentional? Did they have it just enough under control that they could sort of bring him back in the water, but then they could be like, ah, but now we have him under control. We have the wild Gillman. Do you dare come and see him? Kind of thing. It's a promotion tool. But um, yeah, this first escape or the escape attempt, and everything when he comes around, it works well enough. It works well that they're kind of um presenting. You get a glimpse of the Gill man sort of working again. And I love. So there was a scene. There's a little nuance of like he's up and he's sort of like waving his arms and making the noise, and then he dives into the water straight away because that's where he's most comfortable and stuff. So I like that they keep this thing of him having to go underwater. Like the consistency for the creature is actually quite good for the most part.
Yeah, and the escape attempt, as you say, doesn't succeed. right? I
No.
mean, they incapacitate him and then transfer him to the bigger tank where the rest of the movie will take place for the most part. Um, and so, I kind of give this a pass. But you're right, it's a little logistically odd. Um, but the press thing, let's talk about how this works because basically this is a team that has gone to the Amazon.
Hmm.
It has heard about the plot of the first film and is like, well, this is a missing link or an
Mm.
undiscovered, part of the evolutionary chain. We're gonna go down there and see if he's still alive and capture him. They're successful, they bring him back. At no point is the government involved.
No.
At no
No.
point are proper security cautions, even taken. It's just we've got him, like we've got scientists working for us, but we're gonna make some money. We're gonna
Mm.
alert the press.
Well,
Um, it's weird how this universe kind of works that way.
it is. Well, it's worth noting that the main character is a guy called Professor Cleet Ferguson. That's kind of sort of your main male character, and you get hit the love interest, Helen Dobson, and this guy Joe Hayes. These are kind of your main three human protagonists. And so there's no government involved. There's no sort of military involved. Joe Hayes is just some guy that works at this. He's a rough and ready kind of action man of the sort of scene, and he works at this um, aquatic. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it. I think
An oceanarium,
it's an
it's
ocean,
like
yeah. But the
an
professor,
aquarium with some research
well,
facilities.
that's it. Like Professor Ferguson, like works there. He's a professor, but is this a sort of a university institute? Is it affiliated with the university, or is it? We don't find out. It's not a government institute, so it's basically it's like SeaWorld has hired a professor and then sent people out to find the Gillman, and then they're going to go, yeah, we're going to put Gillman on show and study him. It's again,
Pretty much.
it's
Yeah.
nitpicking, but it's kind of a weird setup.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll talk about the professor sort of dynamics, especially in this love triangle in a
Mm,
bit. But I think that yeah, it's not clear exactly how this oceanarium operates. Like, is this a for-profit institution? Is this a nonprofit, marine life facility? Um, I mean, even in like Star Trek 4, there's discussion of like how do we keep this thing going, with receipts, with people coming in. All of that's kind of absent here, and yet you
mm,
kind of have to believe some of that's going on in the background. But he's a professor, and you would think, this discovery of a unknown part of the evolutionary tree would be a big story, and there
oh
would
yeah.
be a lot of attention from scientists from around the world.
Mm.
Um, that's kind of represented here by the media, but you see no response from the
No.
government and no response from the global scientific community. At least in
Yeah.
like old 50s science fiction, it'd be like, oh, they built a rocket, and you'd have like a bunch of rocket scientists reacting, like, well, they've cracked the code of nuclear fission, or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned before, like Jurassic Park Lost World, Jurassic Park 2. Even that has an acknowledgement that there was a congressional hearing about this
Yeah.
thing of like what to do with the dinosaurs. So it's it's only I know this is a 50s film, and so you sort of I'll give it a hand wavy kind of pass for those things, but yeah, it does. I think as viewers, we are a little bit we expect certain things. I think we're seeing certain things, and we've now been trained to expect certain institutions or characters to sort of turn up in these things now. Um, let us move on then to the love triangle. We've mentioned sort of Professor Ferguson and Joe Hayes and Helen. Um, Primarily, sort of like the scientific side is obviously Professor Ferguson and Helen Dobson. She is there. She's not a doctor or anything, but she is part of this research team. She's actively involved in the research and doing these bits and pieces. And Joe is the muscle, for want of a better phrase. He's there to handle the Gill man. but he's obviously like a trained diver and all this other stuff. He is the action man. In the last one, it was obviously two scientists, two sort of doctors going head to head and having this kind of sneering sort of go at each other, and Kay was in the middle of it all. Um,
They
this is
were
a
all
bit,
scientists, right? I
they're
mean,
all
Kay was
scientists, even
a
yes,
scientist
exactly, yeah.
too. Yeah.
This was a little bit different.
Yeah.
And the sort of but these films definitely side with the intellectuals because the professor sort of asks her out for a date, and then when Joe sort of slides in his muscle shirt and all that kind of thing and asks her sort of like she's like, no, I've you know well kind of ends up sort of having to be sort of going with the professor, and then that kind of just dictates that they've now got a relationship.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely sides with the brain, not the brawn of the equation. But
Hmm.
I mean, you're right. This is a different dynamic. And in that scene where the professor's asking her out, the professor asks if she has dinner plans, and she doesn't really answer him. And then Joe comes up and asks her out spontaneously with a lot of cocky flair, and the
Yeah.
professor intercedes and says, "Oh, she's just accepted my dinner proposal," and sort of puts her on the spot, kind of drafts her, and it's sort of like, well, I'm protecting you, but as part of my protection, you've got to say yes to me.
Yeah.
Um, there's definitely a bit of sexism going on here, and implied threat and protectionism and stuff like that. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Joe is the sort of you know Charles Atlas,
Hmm.
man of the beach, and this movie tells you that no, 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 it's the nerdy guy who will get the girl.
Yeah, that's it, and it's you know kind of interesting to have that and to be sort of science focused and that sort of thing. So um, I like that I like that it's doing that. Yeah, right. The meet cute is it? The relationship setup is a little uncomfortable in hindsight, but like it seems to work because then they start working together and the relationship seems to build. And one of the things I'd say that from the last into and to this film, yes, there is only one woman involved in any of these things at any one time, but she is in both cases kind of treated as an equal. Like it's not like she's not. She will become the damsel in distress by the end of the film. Like that's kind of the purpose. But there's an awful lot of time where she is consulted, she's involved, like with the scientific things. She's not.
He also goes into the tank with the gill man, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
and the men are worried about her, and she insists on doing it and insists on being competent. So she sort of has this feminist moment there,
Mm,
where she almost insists on being treated as an equal. There's also this whole dynamic where as this love triangle kind of develops and Joe sort of gives up basically, and she's sort of with the professor. There's this kind of classic dynamic where she's a competent scientist in her own right,
hmm.
at least a marine professional, and then the professor, having established a relationship with her, then starts to worry about her safety.
Yeah,
So it's like, it's a little like, sort of the classic male pattern of like, well, we met as fighter pilots,
yes,
but now that you're my girlfriend, in addition to being, a fireman or a pilot or whatever, now I've got to worry about you. And so now, I'm not so sure you should be putting your life on the line,
yeah.
even though that's obviously what attracted him in the first place. But, your
Yeah,
professional career is done, lady.
yeah.
A man wants to be with you now. There's
Well,
no point in going to college.
yeah.
Like you've got a very pretty brain. I understand. But, you're in a relationship now, so you can quit the doctor stuff.
You have more important things to worry about, like having my slippers and my whiskey ready at the end of the day.
There is a bit of that 50s thing there, isn't
Yes,
there?
yes, it's definitely there without a doubt. But she gets to sort
But
of
she's not having it. Yeah.
no. I was gonna say she gets to stand her ground and says like, no, no, that's not what I'm here for. Like I haven't worked hard to do that. So yeah, I kind of give props to this film for, you know, for that character. Um, I'm not saying it's a sort of as a milestone in feminist cinema or anything, but like for 1955, it makes a case for itself. So, you know,
Jack Arnold, Jack Arnold, feminist pioneer.
that's it. That's a dissertation I want to see. Um,
No, I agree with you. I mean, I do think that scene sort of stands the test of time
mm,
and seems, ahead of its time.
yeah. Um, but as we said, this is a love triangle, and with Joe sort of pushed out of the love triangle, someone else has to stand in, or something has to step in. And what we get is lurking in the background in a lot of shots is the Gillman. And so they have this scene where they go into the tank, as you say, both Ferguson and Helen, and they have a microphone that's dipped under the water that's sort of projecting their voices, so they can sort of make these announcements. And then they've had or at least the professor, or maybe Joe, I can't remember, has this cattle prod that's kind of to teach the Gilman, like, no, you can't go, back off, and there's all this other stuff. So they have some interesting scenes around that. And generally, as the training goes on, then like you say, you see the Gilman chained up, but still able to swim in his tank. Um, but lurking in the background. So they'll be sort of talking in front of like a porthole onto his tank, and all of a sudden, like the Gillman will float past and sort of just be watching and things like. It's really creepy, but it's very effective.
I
Um,
agree. Those are some of my favorite shots.
yeah,
It's a little stalkery.
mm,
Um, but I mean, it is interesting how much these films, the Gilman films, but also these monster movies in general, assume everybody wants white women, right? I mean, it's like, Mars is going to land space probes, and they're going to go straight for those white women.
yep,
Um, that's just a 50s trope, right? I mean, but it's clearly part of the unexamined
yeah,
uh biases of the culture. With, if a fish could be a man, what he'd want would be to get our wives. We got
yeah,
to protect them.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
it's
maybe
a
it's the
little
way this.
racist.
It is, but also it's a weird. It's kind of speciesist as well. To be fair, let's be Gilman is only interested in human, white human women. Um, but one of the things that's
In America, everything goes back to race.
yes.
This is
Oh no, yeah,
all thinly coded for, those non-white peoples, we got
yeah,
to protect our white women.
yeah,
Um,
blonde white women, no less. But yeah, one of the things they also have, and we'll see if it continues with the whole trilogy, but each one of the women at some point will go into the water on their own and will conduct almost like, at least for a couple of seconds, some sort of like synchronized or coordinated choreographed swimming sequence, which is kind of like, I don't know, like I'm alluring in the water, like I shall be, kind of like it's there to show how attractive they are and athletic, and they are very attractive women in these films, but like it's so sort of weird that in the first one when she did it and it's underwater and there's all this sort of like this sort of balletic sort of swimming backwards and swimming over, like, I was like, you're doing this in the Amazon River. The amount of parasites you're picking up right now is astounding. And there's the thing, she does it in the tank, they think she does it in the water in this one as well, and you're like, I get it. Like, this is the this is the trope.
well, I mean,
But
let's be clear why this is in these movies. It's sort of like um a lot of theatrical performances in the old
yeah,
days. I mean, even freak shows would be like, well, uh, yes, this person has no arms, and that justifies seeing her bare legs do card tricks. Like, oh my lordy, you're
yeah,
gonna come see some bare female legs. I mean, and that's clear that's what people were there to see. So it's sort of like Jack Arnold's I mean, this is titillation, right?
yes,
I mean,
oh
this
yeah,
is as close to pornography as you're going to see in a 1950s cinema.
yeah.
Um, Women in bathing suits. I mean, we're only a few decades away from when, women had to have carriages to take them into the ocean so they could get out,
Yeah, that's
in
true.
three-piece bathing suits, right? Um, so that's no longer expected. But yeah, I mean, this is basically titillation.
She got some great gams. Um, yeah. No, it's funny that that's sort of part and parcel of it though. But it works in the sense of like, they do sort of make her this sort of figure of attraction, and then the monster is attracted to her. Um, and so,
The monster's like those bare ankles. I can't
yeah,
stand it.
I swoon. I do want to sort of just call out again. You've mentioned about sort of in the first film, it was all about the under the water scenes, and there's a lot of stuff. And I adore the underwater scenes from the first film. I think they are absolutely fantastic. Um, and that continues with this film. And I'm very impressed that not just the stuff they do, some of the bits and pieces in the Amazon, which is clearly not, but it is they continue in that vein, and then but the stuff in the tank is just as good. Um, they continue this sort of thing of, as we said, the gill man is chained up to a rock at the bottom. He's able to swim around and stuff. And again, I want to sort of call out for Rick Al Browning, the actor who played the creature, the gill man underwater. It's impressive. Like, he's not just swimming and stuff and holding his breath or whatever he's doing, but like it works, it looks good, and
Mhm.
it creates a character in those underwater scenes. Like you kind of forget when the suit is in certain light, out in the daylight, you go, "Oh, it's a dude in a suit." When it's underwater and doing certain
Mhm.
things, there are times when I'm like, I'm completely forgotten. Oh shit, yeah, there's a guy in a suit. Like it's
Yeah,
really
it looks better
impressive.
than a lot of CGI these
Yeah.
days.
Oh, it does. It looks fantastic. So
Yeah. No, I agree with you completely. And I also think that because of the way he's chained and because of the way he's depicted as strong and majestic under the water,
mm,
we sympathize with him.
mm.
Um, even when he's playing the stalker and, in a John Hughes movie and staring through the porthole, we feel bad for him, right? I mean, he's lonely. He's all alone. This is not his natural environment. And I think especially as he's electrocuted, it's hard not to feel bad for him. And I,
Yeah.
and I think that's really an element that I think elevates this one over the first one and over most monster movies, that you are allowed to sympathize with the monster. Um, and I'd even say that, I find myself thinking about the title, that the title feels like it's just a normal sequel title, like Return of the
Yeah.
Monster, right? Is there, Revenge of the Monster. But within this film, what he's taking revenge for isn't the first film.
No.
It's his capture and mistreatment, right? I
Mm.
mean, he's been electrified to teach him commands like Pavlov's dog, and he's intelligent and he feels things. He lusts. There's love in his heart, and he's treated like a caged, dumb animal. Um,
Well, I'm
it's hard not
interested.
to sympathize.
No, I agree. Like it is, like, when he starts to get angry, you're like, yeah, no, I get it. And I think we've
Kill
said
the
this about
humans.
yes, yes, quite so. Um, we've said this about other films we've watched of this era and earlier, where we said like we're watching this and we have a sort of certain sensibility. We've like a 2025 sensibility that we're bringing to this. So we do sort of go, well, yeah, that the treatment of the creature is wrong, and we sort of see that, as you sort of say that that's what he's taking revenge for. I do wonder, like, in the 1950s, is it do we see it more explicit because of the passing of time and how what things have happened than they would have done in the 50s? I do wonder if they sort of there is that kind of thing of you're saying like it's an intelligent creature and it's sort of when it takes revenge it's rightfully angry and frustrated for the way it's been treated. But in the 1950s, would there still been a bit of like, it's a wild animal, it's gone crazy? Would there still been a bit of that rather than the nuance of, what we're discussing?
Yeah, I mean, I find myself thinking about, you know, contemporary accounts of The Merchant of Venice. Um, you know, uh, it was a Samuel Pepys' diary where he records like um yeah, it was quite a funny play. We know it was filled with Jewish stereotypes and like a red bearded
Yeah.
comedian playing a Jew, you know, but it was funny. But he's obviously laughing at
Hmm.
terribly racist stuff. But confesses like I have to say it left a bad taste in my mouth,
Mm.
and I think that's because there is this dialogue about how he's intelligent, the creature is intelligent. I think that audiences would pick up on some of
Yeah.
that, even though today it would be played up more, right? Today the
Yes.
monster would be the hero, um, and so you can see where like what is it the shape of water comes from,
Hmm.
you
Mm.
know, with obviously
Oh,
identifying more with the creature
yeah.
and seeing the relationship
Yeah.
between him and the female uh
Yeah.
character.
This is the film The Shape of Water is based on. This
Yeah,
is, so I was, because having watched Creature from the Black Lagoon, I've gone like, oh yeah, I get it, and it's kind of an extension. Watching this, I'm going like, oh no, this is the film that it's clearly sort of like following up.
commenting on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing on that point you make is we talk about this being a scientific institute, but also an aquatic institute. We do get representations of other animals being treated. So you see performing dolphins, and how they are sort of given treats, fish treats to sort of jump through hoops, pull down flags, do all these other bits and pieces, chase the ball. So there is this thing of training other recognized intelligent animals to do things, but you wouldn't see them sort of like electrocuting or shocking a dolphin. But also at the start of the film, you see a small chimp in a laboratory that's sort of like dressed in dungarees, and that's again not something we sort of do very much today, but that's part of a bygone era. And then they talk about there's a white rats that are being put into a maze, and stuff happens to them in this maze. Call out Clint Eastwood's first movie debut as lab assistant who has a white rat in his pocket and has forgotten it's there. If Clint Eastwood can ever play a nerd in a lab, like it feels kind of wrong even then. But I suppose you're right, because each of these times they are talking about how actually they kind of care for these animals and they should be looking after them and stuff. So for then the creature to be treated in such a different way, I suppose, is being called out as to, oh, these other creatures we know are treated well, but this other thing we're unsure of seems to be get treated poorly. Um,
Yeah, I think there still is that divide between human and animal, um, at least in the mind of audiences at the time. I think
yeah,
today, even the dolphin tricks, I think this is inhumane, right? Like,
yeah,
they're not showing concern for these animals. But I think the fact that the monster is played clearly by a human, right? Um, I mean, same thing is true, Frankenstein, the monster, all these sort of situations where if the monster is played by a human being, I mean, if the aliens are played by human beings,
hmm,
right? Uh, they're not just kind of puppets and creatures. We innately sympathize to a certain degree.
yeah,
We could still otherize them. We could still say they're demonic or zombies and need to be killed. But there's not a lot of that here. And in fact, you know, I think we're inclined to say you should not be treating that intelligent animal that looks like a human, even if it's got gills and scales.
mm,
You should not be treating that human like you would one of these rats.
yes, I agree. Yeah, there'd be, like you said, that bad taste in your mouth would sort of be a bit more strong, wouldn't it? Because you can, it's easier to anthropomorphize the gill man as a sort of an intelligent creature because it's sort of very human-esque rather than um like you say the rat or even the dolphins, I suppose, to an extent. But yeah, so anyway, we go through. There are all these numbers of tests, and the relationship between Professor Ferguson and Helen is growing. Um, and they continue their sort of experimentation. And eventually,
in
though,
more ways than one.
yes, yeah, off screen. This is the 50s, remember.
Yeah.
Um, but as things sort of continue, yeah, eventually, sort of like we see that the creature's been pulling on his chain and has been, I'm going to sort of suggest working on it and figuring things out, and eventually is able to break the chain and break free. Um,
The fact that they show him pulling on that chain so many times and they add this sound effect of the
mhm.
chain clinking, they really do show it a remarkable number of times. And even though at the end it just kind of breaks right by the bond to his leg, not at the base where we've seen him pulling on it, you do really get the sense. I mean, that might be partly a convenience, right? So he's not dragging around a 30-foot chain
Yeah.
or something. But it does really dramatize this effectively. You really get the sense of like he's been chained up. This is terrible. I wouldn't like to be in those circumstances. Um, and it really helps build up the tension of when is he, he's going to escape, right?
hmm
Uh, when is he going to escape? When is he going to escape? And it really, I think it's very effective.
Oh, and I
So, but
agree.
finally
Yeah.
he breaks it,
Mm.
and then I was quite surprised by basically everything that happens after that point. I really like the aquarium stuff with
Mm.
him, them experimenting and sort of, putting him on show and all of this. They could play this up more with talks of the economics and the ethics of it and all of that. But all of that is more new and different for a monster movie.
Yeah.
I quite like all of that. I really thought that the end of this movie was just going to be that he escapes and kind of like goes on a rampage and they fight him and kill him. And actually, he escapes, and you get this brilliant escape sequence where, very quickly Joe leaps in and
Mm.
he drags Joe under the water and straight up murders him, pulls him
Yeah.
under the water, and Joe's dead now. Um, and then he leaps out, and you get this great sort of shot of him leaping directly at the camera, and you cut to a woman in close up screaming. And it's incredibly effective. And then the movie goes off in a totally different direction.
Yeah. Well, I agree that the escape is it's a set piece. It's quite a dramatic set piece, and he does. He sort of makes his way. He's seen the ocean. He's making his way to the ocean. This is something I do have kind of problems with. Again, the logistics thing. I am nitpicking, and I apologize for this, but there is a difference between fresh water and salt water. So just wanted to be clear on that. I'm not
Hmm.
sure that he might be a fresh he's a freshwater gillman. How does that work? Trying to breathe in salt water. I don't know. Let's not
That's
worry about it
fair.
too much. But I love the fact that as he crosses the road, he just he tips a car over. We've said about how strong he is. He's able to take this chain and break this chain. And this guy in the suit, everything it's set up. This is a practical stunt or it's a practical set piece. Flips a car out the way and then continues down the beach. And I was really impressed with that. Again, I'm like, cool, practical stunt. It looks good, but you're really highlighting how other and how strong the Gillman is in this scene, and it sort of I like how it sort of sets that up. But you're right, the film then goes off on a different thing because life goes on apparently, and time passes with the Gillman attacking and doing other things.
Yeah, I was also impressed with the overturning of the car
Mm.
because we're not really sure how strong he is.
Mm.
He sort of leaps onto boats and stuff, but we haven't really seen how strong he is. Now, if he can overturn that car, it's a little more explainable how he could rip apart that chain.
Yeah.
Um, but they really have no idea what they're dealing with here.
No.
It's amazing how little they really understand about him. But you're right. I mean, I did think I was shocked that he escapes into the ocean, and I'm like, oh, well, what's going to happen now? It's a little clunky, the sort of swirling headlines.
hmm
But I do
hmm
like that there are these false reports that nobody knows like what reports are real and what aren't. Um, they say there's like a report from Brazil, they
Yeah.
think he's gone home to the Amazon. But in fact, he's still hanging around in the area. He's after because he got to get that female flesh.
He likes her gams. Yeah, he wants to see her swimming again. So yeah, but he does. they kind of relax, and the professor and Helen go out to a pier to go for a meal. Um, and this is another one of those things when I appreciate, this guy in the suit, Rick Al Browning, and how they've done things. They're on this pier and having this conversation about how much they love each other and all this other stuff, and they're about to go for this meal. And you see the Gillman kind of lurking in the water beneath them. And then when they go in, he sort of pulls himself out and climbs over the barrier and will terrify people in the restaurant and will grab Helen and carry her away. Um, but what this made me realize was because we don't really know how long has passed, like how long a time has passed. But if he's watching her at this pier, then he's clearly been watching her for a while. So like he's decided to strike now, but I wonder if has she been close to water before and the Gillman's been watching from a distance and sort of like been tracking her. I don't know. It adds because I get that he could do that because he's been creepy enough in the tank. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
he's kind of stalkery in the tank, right? And he's
Mm,
continuing his stalking behavior. I do wonder how has he tracked her, especially as you say, like if he's in the water,
yeah.
you know, they're clearly not really near the aquarium. Um, how has he found her? That's, allied that. It doesn't really matter.
No.
Um, what matters is he's obsessed with her, right? Um, so yeah, he does what one does when you like a girl, you kidnap her.
Yeah. And try to take her home.
That's what my
Um,
dad told me.
yeah. Hit them over the head with a club and take them with you.
It kind of
um,
is that, right?
yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's very much sort of caveman-esque. Yeah, carries her away. I like the fact that he does. She sort of faints and he leaves her on the beach, and then he has to get in the water quicker because he's obviously drying out and stuff. Um,
I
and
love
then
the logistics of that. Yeah.
yeah, he leaves it because he has to go in first and sort of stuff. Like it means that somebody else will then um these two young lads see her and they sort of come to check in if she's all right. And as they're checking on her, the Gillman comes back out the water and sort of does them in as well. So you get a couple of kills in. I mean, you don't really see anything, but like you get a couple of kills in, so you realize how dangerous he is. And then she gets taken away again, and they're there to track down Helen.
Yeah, there's a big manhunt going on.
Mm.
I really do like the manhunt and the discovery of the Gilman sequence. I think this whole ending of the movie is very effective. Um, the it's weird that you would imagine the professor would be like, "You've got to save my girlfriend," right? Um, but in fact, he is. I mean, he does say, "Don't shoot," right?
Mm.
Because and then later on, some guys shoot, and he intervenes and says, "I told you not to shoot." So he is concerned with her, but he seems oddly muted. It does
Yeah,
seem, yeah. Do you got that too?
yeah, but I felt more that was more of a thing of I don't know if it was a kind of thing of the era rather
Mhm.
than you know like this is an emotional stunting of the 50s rather than a like an acting choice. I don't know. Um,
I do hope you coppers find my wife intact.
yeah, exactly that. Yeah, exactly. I'm much perturbed about this turn of events rather than getting all sort of upset about it. It feels a bit more like that to me than you know anything else that to read into it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of thought of it as like maybe it's this feeling of he's a professor, so he wouldn't get that emotional about
Yeah,
it. Um,
he's
there's
the
something to
intellect.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I really like the way this manhunt they split up. It's not the professor who finds her, it's
Mm.
just some couple guys. It's one person who sort of the Gillman's in the water and he sort of sees very realistically her body on the beach
Yeah.
and isn't sure what it is. It's just an odd shape and gets them to turn the spotlight back.
Mm.
And it's then that, the gill man, they investigate, and as they're investigating, the gill man comes out of the water
Yeah.
to retrieve the woman he's left on the beach. Um, so I quite like the logistics of the gill man, seeming weak and wanting to get back in the water real quick. But also this discovery. It's that it's not by the main characters. It feels very accidental. They can
Mm.
easily pass that spot up. It looks good with, how you could see it's ambiguous in the light, right?
Yeah.
And then even though they don't show it, they could maybe be a little more effective there. But the idea of having a spotlight on it and, going out to investigate, my God, there's a woman on the beach and this monster coming out of the water is quite an effective uh idea. Um,
Mm.
but I really like how accidental it all feels, right? Like the fact that they don't spot the gill. I mean, it happens to be when he's in the water, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that might make it a little more dramatic, but it also is just feels like a great representation of just the happenstance of how a real manhunt unfolds, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like it's not. Yeah. Like yourself, I appreciate that it's kind of um yeah, accidental. Like it would feel too convenient if it was the professor that sort of saw her and found it, which is what sort of happens in a lot of modern films. So no, I agree. I actually really like the way that sort of is set up. Um, and yeah, the manhunt comes to a close. But I like the fact, like you say, that means that the Gillman is now, Helen has been found. She's ready to be saved, and the Gillman is there to sort of attack. And we've gone through a film, the last film, which has proven how tough and resilient he is and able to sort of survive things. And then in this one, he's already been blown up by dynamite and he seems like a softer target. And so he's going to get shot again and fall and sink into the water of the Florida Everglades.
Exactly like the first movie.
Yeah. And
You
everyone's
know,
going to
and
go, oh, he's dead.
yeah, it's strange. Both are just kind of this is the strangest conclusion to these two movies
Mm-hmm.
to me. I mean, it's like, I mean, the Frankenstein monster is caught in a mill and the mill burns down around him.
Yeah.
Okay, I can understand you say he's dead, right? He was
Yeah.
in a burning structure. Um, I don't understand. He's an aquatic creature. He's in his own
Yeah.
environment. He's been shot like 2 dozen times and shook it off. We just unloaded three more shots into him. Well, those were the shots that happened to kill him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a video game character where the life bar is going down. It's just, oh, that last one was just enough.
Mm.
And instead of having them scream out and you get your video game animation, instead the creature just drifts to the bottom and doesn't move for a few seconds, and you're supposed to assume he's dead.
Yeah.
It's very anti. It's a very strange end to both of these films.
It is. Yeah, you say it's anticlimactic. I wonder if especially with this one, is there supposed to be sort of an element of, I don't know, not sadness because because you've seen what the creature's been doing. It has killed people, but still, is it like it didn't really deserve this? Like it didn't come here. You brought it here, kind of thing. Um, I don't know.
Yeah,
It also feels
it could
lazy.
also be setting up the sequel, right? Like,
Well,
you know,
I
is he
did
really alive or dead?
exactly. I did wonder about that as well. To be like, well, we did this last time he survived. It kind of leaves it open just in case. So yes,
Especially here, it does feel kind of because it's exactly the same ending. It does feel very lazy.
it is. It does feel lazy. I think it. I think. Well, when we get to the third film, I think it has an interesting payoff. All these endings with the choice in the third one, but um, yeah, it's an odd choice when you literally we've literally copied and pasted the last ending of from the first film. Um, yeah,
And in true 1950s style and true of earlier movies as well, there's no denouement, right? So
no,
like you don't see the professor kissing Helen on the beach, and uh the implication that they can start their new life now and get married, you know. None of that. You just see the gill man in the water. The monster's dead. We don't need to see another frame.
Yeah.
It's like the movie, so
Dun, dun,
which is very
dun.
strange.
I mean, again, I actually thought about this because, again, just because the films I'm watching at the moment and stuff, but there was this thing again, like you said, the denouement, where I was like, I'm fully. If this was a modern film, if this was an 80s film, I think because I'm watching films from the sort of 70s and 80s quite a bit at the moment, there would definitely be that scene where they would be sometime later, she would be a little bit bandaged up or something to show that it's not too much time later. And they would be walking along the banks of a river, and there'd be that thing, they'd have a very short conversation about, were we the monsters for the way we treated the gill man? And they say, well, it's something we need to consider of ourselves when dealing with, other life forms or whatever. But at least we're safe now. And then you'd have some bubbles come to the surface on the water,
Mhm.
and that would be you know, the end
The
question mark.
80s ending.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
Um,
right. That sort of ambiguity
yeah,
of, is it still around?
yeah.
Um, but and I think, while that's all a cliche, I mean, I think a little bit of discussion of that, what happens to them afterward, how this will affect their relationship or not. Um,
Or their
you know,
job, or their standing in their job. I mean, like, because of their
yeah,
lack of security, like, people have died. It needs to
yeah,
be
this is Jurassic
discussed.
Park, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like we created a attraction out of a monster and
Mm.
wound up killing people.
Yeah. Someone needs to have their knuckles wrapped. Like, this is not a good thing.
Right, there should be congressional hearings over the, new evolutionary discovery that you murdered and in the process wound up killing a bunch of humans too.
Yeah. And then they're going to send an expedition off to the Amazon to look for more. So,
Yeah,
um, but yeah,
as one does.
yeah. Um, but yes, I think the Revenge of the Creature works. You said before, is it as good as or better than the first one? It's an odd thing that the first one sits in that sort of second wave of Universal monster movies from the sort of 50s, you know, the late 40s and 50s. And it's kind of the only sort of I suppose it's the tail end. It fits into that 50s kind of monster category rather than sort of it's it doesn't quite stand it's side by side with the 32 Dracula and the original Frankenstein. It very much feels of its era. But that first one is the classic. That's the one that everyone talks about. Like, it's in the Amazon. It's the underwater scenes and all that kind of stuff. But as we sort of watched these and we were discussing them, I think I would rather watch Revenge of the Creature than Creature from the Black Lagoon if I was to watch them again.
I agree. I agree 100%. I sort of feel that outside of the underwater, I mean, and look, these first two were in 3D too, right, which we're not watching
Yeah.
them in 3D. But outside of the gimmicks, right,
Mm,
which is basically underwater photography and 3D, right? Now imagine seeing these 3D shots of underwater footage in the 1950s. That would be pretty impressive, right?
yeah, yeah.
I mean, this is as close as you come to like the Earth series on the BBC or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
in the 1950s. This is kind of amazing. Um, but once you take away that kind of what is today a gimmick and overshadowed by, further advances of high definition and underwater photography and everything else, um, really that first one is a retread of those older monster films. And
Hmm.
it assumes that you have seen the genre already, you know how this is going to go, and it sort of phones in its plot.
Mm.
Yes, the monster is a little different. I like the monster. I like this idea about evolution. I like that he's in the Amazon, but there's not a lot to distinguish him from other monsters.
No.
Um, and really the plot is basically a retread and it knows it. It phones it in. It, you know, the love triangle thing is so underdeveloped. It drops characters, it drops ideas. It just kind of just a gesture to them because it assumes you're so familiar to it. So really at sight, but and what it does to justify itself is it adds these gimmicks, right? It's underwater, it's 3D. Um, but this is the late stage monster film. It's really looking backwards.
Yeah.
I think Revenge of the Creature is looking forwards. It's looking forward to Jurassic Park. It's looking forward to
Mm.
The Shape of Water. It's looking forward to stuff that we are thinking of that came after, as opposed to just retreading, you know, the monster's back and
Yeah.
he's out to get us again.
Yeah, no, I agree. Actually, that's a really I like that. That, like you say, that the first one, as I sort of said, is a part of that second wave of Universal monster movies. It's part and parcel of that. You're right. They've gone what worked before with the Wolfman and with Frankenstein and so on and so forth, and it feels in plotting other monster movies, it feels in plotting very similar. But yeah, Revenge of the Creature is feels much more layered in what it's presenting and maintaining some of those underwater shots. And I think it gives you more of the creature. Um, and yeah, I think very similar ending, but I think it gives a better sort of presentation of the Gillman as well. And I like this idea. He says it's sort of looking forward. It's this film, the fact that like the Shape of Water is taken from this film rather than actually from Black Lagoon. I think sort of says quite a lot. But you're right that there is Jurassic Park in here. There is Jaws 3 even uh, sort of copies off this and that. So yeah, this is definitely sort of like influencing, I think, in the future. Right.
I did think about the later Jaws movies too, of sort
Yeah.
of hunting the family, like
Yes.
the animal that's obsessed with human concerns.
Yeah, I haven't watched it in a long time, but one day I will go back to Jaws: The Revenge because it's a treat. Um. Anyway, any other final thoughts then for Revenge of the Creature?
No, I agree. I think this is slightly better than the first.
Mm.
But I'm certainly glad that I saw it. I had never seen it before.
No, yeah, I think this is good. I'm enjoying this as a sort of I'm surprised about the level of continuity and how it's sort of trying to sort of keep these things. So we shall see how that progresses into the next one. Yes, on the next film, on the next episode, we will be talking about The Creature Walks Among Us, the last of the original creature from the Black Lagoon, the final Gillman film. And yeah, if
They
he's
kind of
walking
work
among
as a
us,
trilogy.
they
It's
do.
it's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
And I think we'll discuss that about, how does the trilogy wrap up with another love triangle, most definitely. Um, we shall see. More blonde white women, or woman, we should say, to be admired by the creature.
There's never more than one.
No, no, no. They're expensive for films, clearly. That's the only reason I can think of. There can't be any sexist or misogynistic reasons as to why there's only one woman in the films. Um,
It's the 1950s. You're only allowed one woman per cast.
yes, there's very few of them about, apparently. Anyway, yes, for those that are watching this on the Patreon feed, when it first comes out, again, let us know what you think. Have you been joining along, watching along? These are available sort of like on archive.com. Go check them out on there if you want to go watch these things, and let us know what you think.
Archive.org. Not that
Archive.org.
we're promoting it. Can't
Just
tell
saying,
you whether it's legal or not, but
no. Other paid streaming services are available, but just saying, archive.org is there. Yeah, let us know what you think. What are your thoughts on the creature and the Gillman? And the same for you guys watching this on the main feed a little bit in the future. What are your thoughts? Have you enjoyed the Gillman films? Is this as good as or better than the creature from the Black Lagoon? Let us know what you think. Is this a hot take that we now have? Um, Either way, get in contact. Let us know what you think.
the
Uh,
important thing is that you and I agree, which
well,
means
yes,
that it's right. And any listeners who disagree with us and think the first movie is the better of the two are wrong. And you're entitled to be wrong, especially as long as you're listening and rating us 5 stars and all of that,
that's it.
and following us on YouTube, then you're allowed to be wrong.
Yes, That's it. Yeah, we allow wrong people around us. Just don't challenge us. We're like the Ebert and the Siskel and Ebert of this podcast. I think that's we sort of set the bar. But yeah, as you say, but if you like what we're doing as well, drop a comment, leave a review. Any interaction is good interaction. We really appreciate it. Anyway, for now, enjoy the film. Julian, thank you very much for this conversation. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And we shall see you on the next episode.
There's something very important I forgot to tell you.
What?
Don't cross the streams.